I've said this before. I always feel like I can get wide receivers. Maybe not this year, but I can get a wide receiver. You know what I mean? Like I can
get Amari Cooper in like 6.
I can fill other voids in places through either through the draft or later on in your startup draft. But the tight end is very tricky, and it takes a long time to develop most of the time. So it is one of those things where that is the exception for me. That's where I feel like,
and I can understand that.
I'll reach for this guy over here, and I'll figure out the other stuff and fill in the blanks if I kind of overextended myself with one pick.
And I say that about like if it went that example I said where it went Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews. Like I'm not taking Dallas Goedert in the 3rd, right? Like. And I probably wouldn't take George Kittle because at the same time, like I would be willing to let it go behind me after that point because I know then I'll get George Kittle. I know I'll get Dallas Goedert,
TJ Hawkinson
coming back, or TJ Hawkinson come back. I know I'm most likely to get one of those 3, and if not, then I know I'm going to settle for my next guy, which would probably be like David Njoku, right? Like somewhere on those
because in my mind, if tight ends being overdrafted, then that means I'm getting value somewhere else. Maybe it didn't stick to my original plan, but I really try to stay very fluid in the draft process as much as I can.
That's why I usually try to start and set that tone by taking a Kyle Pitts or a Mark Andrews. And usually, I haven't been in many drafts where that's happened, where it's gone like, oh, Kyle Pitts and then Mark Andrews. And I'm like, oh, what do I do?
Right.
Because I have been in that situation before, and I just kind of waited then. I have waited on it. But for the most part, once that 3rd round comes, in my eyes, like that back end of the second, depends who's there, that 3rd round, like I'm eyeing tight end right there. That's usually my sweet spot for the position. And even in Superflex tight end premium leagues, where I like to go quarterback, I have no problem taking my tight end right there in the 3rd as well. Like the Mark Andrews. If Kyle Pitts is somehow there, that'd be a home run. I haven't done many startups where Kyle Pitts is a rookie or a player in those. So for me, though, like, it's Superflex tight end premium, right? Like if I'm in a league where it's Superflex tight end premium, I have no problem my first 3 picks being 2 quarterbacks tight end, right? Like literally what the league is called after.
Yeah,
like I want those primo positions. So if you're playing a Scott Fishbowl where you get extra points for first downs and you got a running back or carries, like, okay, now that's an extra special point for that position.
Right.
Now I'm a little bit more focused on that position. So like, it's important to know your league rules and structure because without doing that, that's an easy chance to get yourself in a hole right out the gate, right? So if you're doing a startup, let's start there, is you want to stop, you want to read over the league rules and check everything. Like, is there a league mediums in it? Like, what does everything entail?
Superflex leagues are one of the ones that you really got to check because we automatically talk about how valuable quarterback is in Superflex leagues. Well, is the quarterback scoring 6 points per touchdown or is it 4 points per touchdown? Is it a point for every 25 yards or a point for every 20 yards? Like those types of things. Is there any penalty for sacks, incompletion? Like specifically the quarterback position is the one that gets messed with the most. So you really want to check because that can change your values of the quarterbacks quite a bit.
And so like I also like to focus on in my startups when it comes to tight end is like this year, for example, it's a really solid rookie class tight ends. I love to go on, like, when you get to round, like, 14, 15, right around there. That's where I start. I'm like Pac-Man, right?
You just take one every round?
Gobble. I'm swooping all. Like, that's where I get Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid, and Luke Musgrave. Like, I'm that guy. You saw me do it recently in our startup for the Ohio Dynasty that we started last year. I came away with Greg Dulcich, Daniel Bellinger. I ended up got like 4 of the rookie tight ends. Dulcich looks great. Bellinger helped. I ended up starting Dulcich the whole year. I won the league.
Yeah.
As my number 2 tight end. That's on top of already the good tight ends I already have because I went by the same structure. I got my good tight end. So like, I think there's just really good value at tight end to find because most people grab their starter tight end and then they
forget about it.
Yeah, because they're so hungry. Like, because then all of a sudden, like Matt said earlier, like there's really good value at receiver a lot of times. Like, oh, I can't believe this player's there, or that running back, or like another quarterback in Superflex. And it's so easy to pass by these tight ends because once you get past these top 5, they're all the same guy anyways. Where I look at it completely differently. Like I'm looking at I'm not looking at the guys that are like, okay, the same guy as, I'm not looking at Dawson Knox, right? Like, or Gerald Everett. Like I'm looking at that's where I start to focus on the upside guys. Like if I can come away with Kyle Pitts, then I'll draft David Njoku in like the 7th, right? So I have 2 tight ends where it's like, oh wow, he's kind of low up in tight end. Then I'll still hit when I get to like around 13, 14, 15. I'm grabbing all those young guys to put them on my roster.
If you've ever seen any of my dynasty rosters, I usually have about 6 tight ends rostered.
Yeah, me too.
And about 3 or 4 more on my taxi squad. I'm just constantly doing it. You know what I mean? And my startup strategy is very similar too. I'll start back end, like you said, just start loading up on high upside guys, because you never know who the next guy to kind of emerge and be the guy.
The next Logan Thomas, Darren Waller,
right? Whether it's a short-term guy or just like out of the blue, he
Robert
all of a sudden,
Tonyan.
right? Exactly. So
or Greg Dulcich himself, who's a rookie this year, showed promise. I mean, those guys in a tight end premium league or any one quarterback league, again, because the tight end is so thin and it's such a shallow pool, is even if it's not a 1-for-1 trade, those are the kind of throw-ins that you throw in that really get a deal done, right? Like, man, I really want to get that first, but like it's like a borderline trade, doesn't really want to get it first, but then all of a sudden you throw into like a Greg Dulcich and you're like, oh yeah, I want that. Like, there's a lot of deals that I get done because of the depth I have at tight end, and I throw those players in, right? I remember a couple of years ago, there's a deal where I was trying to get done, and I wanted to get rid of Saquon at the time, and I want to get Debo, and I want to get J.K. Dobbins and multiple firsts. And he kept denying the trade, and he really wanted Pat Freiermuth, and finally Pat Freiermuth had like his big game his rookie year, and he accepted a trade after I sent it for like the 3rd time. And Freiermuth was the key to getting that trade done.
Yep.
So a lot of people, that's the thing. It comes down to the have and the have-nots, and the have-nots will always want to be haves.
Right.
So the better you can put yourself in position to be a have on the tight end position, it just opens the door, not just on how much talent you have, but it opens the door on how many trades you can make and structure the way your trades look. Because having that tight end to throw in always gets deals done. Having Njoku last year got me Tyreek Hill on a Dalvin Cook trade, right? Like, he didn't want to make that trade up, but once I offered him like David Njoku, who just signed an extension, it immediately got the deal done. It's funny how the tight ends, when you start adding those onto the trades, turn maybes into snap accepts, and that owner feels really good about it. And for the most part, honestly, when you make those trades, those guys there's no difference between getting David Njoku, who's averaging 10.1 points, or getting Gerald Everett, who's averaging 9.3 points, right? Like,
it's not going to, week to week, it's not going to make a big difference.
Nope.
Right?
But people are still craving that upside, right? The next Dallas Goedert, and they're just hard to come by. And we've been waiting now for as long as I've owned Dynasty Nerds and been doing this podcast, which is 9 years. We've been waiting for that list to get wider, but it's always stuck at 4, right around there, like 4 to 5, like not even 5. Really,
I was going to say sometimes it's 3. It really is. It's not a big list, and it doesn't seem to be growing. Every once in a while, a new guy will kind of emerge, but then another guy will fade away. Darren Waller kind of disappeared. You know what I mean?
Right. This year was 6 down. We're all equals. They're all from 152 down to 135, which is 5 to 14. And then it was Evan Ingram. It was at 176, so 24 more points than Tyler Higbee, who was at 5. And Evan Ingram was a difference maker. And then you go to 190, 200 points, 215, and towards Travis Kelce is the mecca of all meccas. He's 316, but that difference per game, that 12.7, that 13.4 over everybody else's 9 and 8, those 3 points of game difference are difference makers. They really are over your league mates. And that's how you win games that you could have lost. Because we all see it all the time. Like, oh, I lost by 1 point, 0.3 points. Oh, 2 more points. The tight ends are the difference makers.
There you go.